Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 75 of the Online Tennis Podcast. Today I am joined by the Honourable Mr. Stephen Boughton of the Slice Tennis, wearing his merch today. Steve, how are you doing?
Doing great, Jack. We're riding the Canadian wave.
A Canadian wave, yeah, of course. With they won the ATP Cup. They've technically won the Laver Cup, right? Vance was kind of saying that. Felix instrumental in that win. It's great time for Canadian tennis. How are you feeling in general?
Yeah, absolutely. Great time for Canadian tennis. It's been a long tennis season, so a lot of travel for me, as I think we discussed on the last time I came on your show. Thanks again for having me, by the way. It's I think as far as Canadian tennis goes, this is the biggest result ever, other than Bianca winning the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
So that's, obviously insanely big for Canada. But then winning the Davis Cup, they've been competing at the Davis Cup. The Davis Cup started in 1900, I think. So it's like obviously this historic, legendary event. Canada to win it with a little bit of controversy. And I don't know, on our own end here in Canada, the national broadcasting feed cut out 2 games before the final. Like they had a satellite issue. So basically no one in Canada actually saw the final point.
Really? Oh my God.
Tragedy of errors. A classic Canadian thing to go wrong with our infrastructure. We all complain about it here. But anyways, it was just an amazing result for Canada. And our optimism going into 2023 is at an all-time high probably.
Of course, yeah. I'll touch on a bunch of stuff. That is actually insane, by the way. That's a crazy story.
It is.
What a goof. Anyway, yeah, I'll touch on a bit of the information. Obviously, Shapo and Felix Auger-Aliassime seem instrumental in this win. They were the guys that won the Junior Davis Cup as well, so there was a little bit of nostalgia there for them, I'm sure, winning it back in 2015 and now winning it in 2022. For the first time, of course, Canada hadn't won the Davis Cup, as you touched on. Felix, of course, so instrumental, important in 3 singles wins: Oscar Otta, Lorenzo Musetti, Alex de Minaur. Didn't get broken once throughout those matches. A classic Felix indoors showing, I would say. Also won a deciding doubles against Italy with Pospisil in the semis. Denis Shapovalov as well, winning a very important match against Kokkinakis in the final and able to win a deciding doubles with Pospisil in the quarters against Germany as well. Looking back to March, of course, this is what you touched on maybe with... Is this the controversy you mean, or was it just the cutting out maybe? This is quite controversial as well.
It is. Todd Woodbridge, I literally just had a back and forth with him on Twitter today. I don't know if you know who Todd Woodbridge is, but he's obviously a pretty famous commentator. He literally just brought it up today. He said, there's always going to be an asterisk beside this Canadian win. I'm like, what are you talking about? So basically Canada lost in, I guess it would be called, I should have looked this up, but the qualifying stage for the world group. So they lost without Felix or Denis there. They lost. And then with Russia getting kicked out, they took the highest seeded team who lost, which is logical in my opinion, which was Canada. Todd was saying, it should have been the winner from like the I don't know, like the group below or something. And then I was just like, I don't know. I don't think he'd be complaining if Australia didn't get the beat down in the final. So,
good point.
It's like there's no asterisk. 2022 is the year of an asterisk. You could put an asterisk beside the Australian Open title, the Wimbledon title, the U.S. Open title a little bit. So, I mean,
good point.
I think the Davis Cup, if it has one, it falls way down the line. And we all know that asterisks don't actually count. Nobody remembers them as history moves on. So that's all. That's my biased take on it's basically Todd Woodbridge. And there's a few other guys, but I don't know. I just don't see how, like, out of all of 2022, like, that's a controversial thing. Like, I just don't really get it. And don't you prove that you deserved it when you go and win the whole Davis Cup? Like,
well, that too, of course.
Like, it kind of answers any like controversy. It's like, well, if they shouldn't have been there, then maybe no. It's like I don't know. I think Davis Cup is so. I think Todd was more saying, Davis Cup has bungled their format and everything like that, and the fact that Felix and Denis weren't playing in that stage probably shows that the scheduling and stuff is not right. So why were those guys not playing? If they had played, they obviously would have beaten Holland. No offense, Holland, but they just won the Davis Cup, so they clearly would have.
Yeah. I agree, and as a non-biased party in this, right, I can kind of give a fair opinion on it. My opinion is that they earned their place at the highest ranked nation. That's always been a criteria for wildcards into the world group. They earned their place in 2019 when they got to the final, right? I mean, if they hadn't got to the final then, I looked up the points, it would have been really, really close. There's a chance they wouldn't have made it, actually. Okay. And it was looking back, it's funny that knock-on effect, because they won a deciding doubles in the semis that year against Russia, and had that went to a third set tiebreak. Had they not won that tiebreak, they might not have been here to even contest it. So
it's a great point. That's great due diligence, Jack, on that, and I didn't even know that. So yeah, I just no, almost it's like a non-story for me. It's just like we were in there and then we beat everyone. So end of story.
Nobody would have complained about it if they hadn't won.
Yeah, so. Like, and exactly. If Australia had won, we wouldn't have heard anything from Todd, which he denied, but I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either. I think he's talking a bit of crap there. We'll talk a bit more about the Canadian side here and what actually happened. First thing I want to talk about is Felix' first match. I want to talk about is him beating Demon in the final 6-3, 6-4.
Mm-hmm.
Alex de Minaur's record in Davis Cup is insane. You know, he's lost one of his last 11 matches prior to losing to Felix, beating people like Shapo himself, Cilic, Goffin, Van de Zandschulp, Fucsovics. A crazy list of players for him to take down. This was huge for Felix to come out, not get broken against one of the fastest guys in the game, saving all break points in the final, by the way. So huge. Use net forays a lot to sort of snuff out the danger. For me, that's one of the biggest improvements Felix has made. Able to come forward off of big serves nowadays and big forehands when he was a bit more content to just hang at the back of the court. Anyway, it's more about just the weight of this, because for me, it's one of the biggest wins of Felix's career. Because it's still a final, and at the start of the year, he still looked like he still had that bit of nerves in that Rotterdam final prior to this year as well. He's the man in finals now, right? It's just such a big win.
He has turned it around. He is the man, and it is the biggest title of his career, right? Like, you got to think. I was thinking about it. It's the biggest title of anyone on the Canadian team's career, so Felix is, coming through ADM. I did expect him to beat Alex de Minaur. I know he's a very tough cookie in general, but it seems to get even tougher when it comes to competing for his country, for Australia. Obviously, with all the pride that Australia has with tennis, I think they've won it 28 times. You could probably throw an asterisk between amongst beside a bunch of those when it was like 4 teams competing. But let's just leave that where it is. Anyways, so Felix, to me, he was the favorite in that match because he has that level of weapon that Alex does not have, which is, like, to me now, the serve and the forehand. And the forehand was the main shot that when Felix was able to get time on it and hit it where he wanted, it really cracked open any point. And the big weapons in the men's game are so good that it doesn't really matter how good your defense is. Maybe unless you're Djokovic, because Federer and Nadal had some of the biggest weapons. I mean, I guess not the biggest weapon, not biggest, but they had the two probably best forehands of all time, and it wasn't enough sometimes. But I do like to think the best offense beats the best defense, and that's what I kind of saw against with Felix and ADM. And he had to save a bunch of break points. It's very early when I watched the match, so I'm not super crystal clear on all the ins and outs of the stats. But I know Felix, he was down love 40 on a serve a couple of times, I think, and served his way out of it. And that was just emblematic of his whole run post US Open, right, on the indoor hard courts. Just so confident. If he wasn't out of a service, if he wasn't broken, he had a chance to come through it. And he played a super mature match, and just close. Now he's gone from a guy who was 0-8 in finals before 2020. He's won 4 singles titles, ATP Cup, Laver Cup, and Davis Cup. It's unbelievable. So
you could technically say, if you include the ATP Cup and the Davis Cup, you could say he's now 6-9, I believe, in finals, where he was 0-8. That's insane.
The ATP Cup is an ATP tournament, and the Davis Cup is it's the Davis Cup. So it's I think nobody can think of him as a guy who struggles with being clutch anymore.
Yeah, totally. That's the closing statement for Felix, for sure, because it's just an insane level he brings all the time. So clutch nowadays. Cool. I want to talk a bit more about Shapo though as well, and the doubles in general, because Canadian doubles nowadays, obviously backed by the sort of solidity of Vasek Pospisil and his huge serve, and he's always been a guy that's come forward in the singles game as well, and obviously a Wimbledon champ. I think people forget that back in the day. So, obviously an experienced doubles player through and through. He is a great guy to be beside. But Shapo and Felix, after losing their first 2 doubles of their career in 2019, they've went on a streak of 6 matches in doubles. Not together necessarily, but sometimes with Pospisil. But, one loss to Klizan and Polasek, then Fognini and Berrettini in 2019. And now it's this week, beating Kevin Kravitz and Tim Plates two of the best doubles players in the world for me. You know, double French Open champion there and Paris Masters champion. That was an insane win. Did you get to see much of that match?
Yeah, I did, and I saw that Canada was in super big trouble against Germany, right? With Shapovalov dropping that first match to
Struff, right?
Struff, and that's not a really good loss for Shapovalov, but Struff is obviously dangerous, big weapons on an indoor court. And then they were down. Yeah, they were down kind of bad. It almost looked like that first set against Putz and sorry, the other guy's name.
It's Kravitz. Yeah,
Kravitz. You could see that they were getting a little bit outclassed as the double specialists. I thought Shapovalov was playing well, but Vasek was looking slow, and he was kind of Shapo was kind of carrying him to a loss. It looked like, and then they just found some inspiration halfway through the second set or at the beginning of the second set maybe, and they were able to just really flip their level and just kind of they're both better singles players than the guys on the other side of the net, and that I think their kind of general higher ceilings showed, and they started to just really Shapovalov was blown away by. He said he's like, wow, I can't believe we started playing amazing, not missing anything, and just and then the match point where he just hit like a return winner kind of showed what level they were on at the second half of that match, and really saved Canada because they could have been out before it started basically. Because at the beginning of the Davis Cup finals, Canadians were thinking, yeah, we could, maybe even should win this whole thing. Like, to me, like, what about you, Jack? Felix and then Denis was the best. I think it was the best 1-2 combo there is, like, objectively, like, because Djokovic wasn't there, like Nadal or Alcaraz wasn't there. So I think they just literally had the best two singles players.
Yeah, and they're no. Felix certainly is such a good doubles player. Shapo's still got a little bit of work to do in the return and stuff, but as a pair, you can't sort of knock their gel ability. How good they are at just bouncing off one another. Obviously, they've been playing for years and years, and it shows every single time they come to the court. Like Shapo said it himself, he gets so pumped up, you couldn't miss a ball for a while. That is not Shapo most of the time, right?
Yeah, sure, facts, yeah.
So for me, for them to come into the doubles pairs as the best team in the world a lot of the time is so huge. Like, I would say they've got the most solid doubles pairings out of the 8 teams there, which is huge.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I guess about the doubles setup. Like, some people were confused why Felix wasn't chosen in that first German doubles matchup, but like you pointed out, in 2019, Pospisil and Shapovalov had they created a lot of magic in that run to the final. So I actually asked Frank Dancevich, the coach of Canada, after that match or after that tie. I said, did 2019 play into your decision to call Shapo back onto the court instead of Felix? And he said, or just to have that pairing? And he said, yeah, it did. And they have a lot of experience together. And for whatever reason, because then he actually picked Felix in the next round, right, to play doubles. So picked right both times because we got the win in the doubles both times. But it was those first 2 ties were very close. And then, Australia didn't really feel as close.
Yeah, I know, which is a relief because the Fognini-Berrettini doubles, right? They were down a break in both sets, managed to get it in straight sets somehow. Yeah. For me, though, Shapo against Kokkinakis, that's one. Having lost his last 2 singles matches, fair enough that he stepped up, right? He had to get a win somewhere, and Kokkinakis was the guy to do it against. So, relief for you there for sure.
For sure.
Anything else on Canada before I move on to Australia? Because obviously you were at a lot of conferences and stuff, right? You were.
Yeah, no, they're just a great group of guys. Like, I've covered this group way more than previous ones in the past. I did an interview on the Slice with Gabriel Diallo and Alexis Galarneau, who are the 2 kind of bench players, I guess, for the Davis Cup this year. They didn't play at all in the finals, and they had like a hilarious. So after the championship, they both had like lost their voices completely and they couldn't talk. But I asked them a question, which I could tell Felix and Denis actually loved because they knew their voice was gone, I think. So then it was like really funny to see them struggle and try. And the line of the night was from Gabriel, who he said, we left it all on the bench. And that's what it took to get him over the line, which was really funny. But just a good team spirit. Like, it's, Canadians are generally known for being nice, I think. And those guys are all top class guys, from Felix to Alexis or Gabriel, super nice, super stand-up dudes. And obviously great tennis players because we're on top of the world, baby.
Hell yeah, quite right, Steve. Yeah, I saw that video on your Twitter. You gotta watch that, viewers, if you've not seen it before. It's really funny. I was laughing out loud at it. The laughability from everybody there is quite contagious, I gotta say.
gonna try to speak, but I think you have your answer.
And Gabe?
Well, I think like
Yeah, well done. A little bit on Australia, the losers, if you'll spare them for a second,
Yeah.
Steve. Amazing achievement for Australia to get to the final alongside the Billie Jean King Cup, by the way. The women getting there as well.
True.
First final for the Aussies since 2003. Their last title when Leighton Hewitt, the captain, helped Australia defeat Spain. This year, obviously spearheaded by the amazing de Minaur at the Davis Cup. On his own, for me, Demon could lead Australia to a victory at some point, for sure. He's such a good team player. I think levels about top 15 of saying that for me when he's playing Davis Cup. Solid doubles pairing as well with Purcell and Ebton. Obviously going to be very difficult to beat in any situation. That would have been testy, actually, if Canada had to play them.
Totally.
Yeah, obviously they're Wimbledon champs.
And that's a fair critique. So maybe you're going to ask, so sorry to jump ahead, but just ask your question because I feel like you're going to get to it anyways.
No, I was just summarising, basically saying they defeated Pavic and Mektic for the second time this year after the Wimbledon final, so that would have been huge. I was going to talk about Nick, actually, so you go with what you were going to say, Steve.
Well, Hewitt brought up the point, I think a reporter asked and set him up, but Hewitt brought up the point, we had the best doubles team in the world and they didn't get to play. So, like, the new format is not really legit for really testing these countries' strengths when it comes to singles and doubles, and have I forget what the old format honestly was. It was just it was over wasn't each tie over 3 days.
Yeah. So it used to be 2 singles matches on the Friday, doubles match on the Saturday, and then 2 singles matches on the Sunday.
Right. So the doubles would play a pivotal role where I honestly understand his point. Australia probably would have won the doubles, but if it was still a 3-set, I think we would have won the singles with Felix regardless. But that was a fair criticism. But yeah, you're going to ask about Nick not playing.
Yeah, I was going to say, had they had Kyrgios there, it obviously would have been a much bigger task for me. Kokkinakis is great, but he does play like a sort of top 100 player a lot of the time, just doesn't have the same consistency as the rest of the guys. It speaks for itself. We all know how good Nick Kyrgios is. And when he was asked about it, he said he was in Saudi Arabia earning 6 figures. Hewitt and de Minaur said they tried to get him on the team, but there was nothing they could do. They tried as hard as they could.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about it?
Yeah, well, I saw, obviously both of them were pretty dejected after the loss, and they got asked about that again. And all Demon said was, he's like, I tried and I couldn't do it. And he's like, I still feel like we had chances without him. But yeah, it's just, Nick beats to his own drum, right? He doesn't feel like he owes anyone anything, or the country anything. And, obviously that Twitter comment, you can take it at face value or not, take it with a grain of salt because this is some Twitter comment. But he's like, I'm in Abu Dhabi. You could argue taking sports washing money for 6 figures when, if you had won the Davis Cup, you would have gotten 6 figures as well individually because of the prize money there. So, that's what if Australia had a 1-2 punch of Kyrgios de Minaur, I guess it would have been based on ranking. That's super tough for Canada then because de Minaur has a 4-0 head-to-head against Shapovalov, and it's a bad style matchup for Shapovalov. And then, Felix against Kyrgios, that's just a tough match. I think technically Felix would still be the favorite there, but it's close, right? If Felix doesn't have a good returning night, it's going to be 2 tiebreaks or 3 tiebreaks, and we'll see. So it would have been a lot tougher than de Minaur, Felix, and then like you said, Kokkinakis, Shapovalov. But that's the nature of the beast, right? With Davis Cup, players can't always show up and don't always show up for the country, and that does to me take away from a bit of the, if you guaranteed all the best players from each country showing up every single time, it would be a better product, right? So that's just part of the struggle, obviously, of the incompetent global organization of tennis in general, not just the Davis Cup. It's just a constant battle, and I don't really see it ever getting better, but maybe it is. I don't know.
No, I agree. And it's not another asterisk, as Todd Woodbridge would say, to add to the title, right? It's just is what it is. It happens.
Yeah.
So, and on Kyrgios, for me, it just cements the idea that he needs to grow up. I'm kind of tired of him, to be honest. He always talks about sort of money not being that important, and trying to donate it to certain charities and stuff, and then he comes out with a comment like that just to put somebody down on social media. Basically, just comes across as petulant and ignorant, basically.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's kind of just par for the course at this point, though, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we won't dwell on him too much. I would like to talk a bit about drama. I don't normally dwell on the drama too much, but this is quite a good one because there's differing opinions on this decision. Basically, USA lost to Italy in a deciding doubles tie, with Jack Sock and Tommy Paul losing to Fabio Fognini and Simone Bolelli in the quarterfinals. No Rajeev Ram on the team, the world number 3. He wasn't nominated. When Captain Marty Fish was asked about it,
Rajeev and I are great friends. We had multiple conversations as well. I think the world of him in terms of his game. Obviously, he's one of the best doubles players in the world. But putting a team together isn't as simple as just taking a player that's ranked high and put him with another player and just hope that they do well.
Can I just ask what's different about this tie compared to the group stage and the qualifiers when he was involved?
I want to put a different doubles team on the court. Period.
And that team ended up being Paul and Sock. He then went on to say, afterwards, after they lost,
but if Rajeev was here or not, those guys were going to win today. They played well, and they're too good. 40-year-olds and beyond aren't going to play for very much longer, and so I have to look at the future as well. So it's not just let me look at the rankings and let me just go down and just pick. This isn't just a one tie, one match situation for me. It's a process to build this team.
A few things to think about. Yeah, I know. Yeah, my initial reaction already is Marty Fish has made a mistake there, and he's not doing a very good job of covering himself, to be honest. He's basically just saying he was going to get the flack anyway, whatever happened. He did go on to say that. There's no excuse for that decision for me.
To me, yeah, I think it's a bad decision. It's just like, well, didn't they only take 4 players? Like, you can take 5 players. So
yeah,
so there has to be more of that story, because why would you not take him?
I have a few other tweets that might shed some light, if you like.
Well, let's do it.
Yeah, one tweet from Stephanie Miles pointed out that the prize money for Davis Cup is split between each team member. Less players in the team equals more money. That's your cynical perspective on it.
Does the coach get any share of that money?
It's equal. Well, I don't know if it's coaches as well, but players certainly it's equal, according to Stephanie Miles.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Rajeev Ram said, by the way, how's everyone's Thanksgiving going the next day after they got knocked out? A little bit salty. And Joe Salisbury, if only the USA had someone better for doubles. Oh, wait, on Instagram. Loved that. Tommy Paul then went on to say that Ram had struggled in the ties in Glasgow against singles players in general, having lost to Bublik and only just defeating Murray 7-5 in the third. FYI, Rajeev Ram has a 14-5 record this year against singles players in doubles.
So wait, does Tommy Paul mean in like single? Like, was Rajeev? I didn't see anything in Glasgow. Was Rajeev Ram playing singles?
No. So he was playing. Sorry, I didn't elaborate on that. Bublik was playing with Nedovyasov, and Murray was playing with Salisbury. So struggling against singles players on a doubles court, according to Tommy Paul, when he was playing with Jack Sock.
That's an interesting comment from Tommy. I didn't really expect to see that, and I don't know. Maybe that was true. I didn't see any of those matches. Yeah, it just seems weird. It just seems weird that there's 4 spots. You could have had a 5th. If it comes down to money, that's greasy. That feels like corruption.
Yeah.
And yeah, Marty Fish just didn't really cover his bases well there, and I think that's a bad decision because it just looks terrible, right? It's not about. Is it about building for the future? It's I don't know. None of those guys are babies anymore. Tommy Paul's 25. Taylor Fritz, they're all kind of mid-age now, and it's about winning for your country. That's what it's for. It's about if Marty Fish had to come off the bench and get it done in doubles, that should be how it's done. It's not about building for the future. Honestly, I don't think. To be fair, I don't think the USA's tennis future is looking that bright in general. And I'm gonna have Gil Gross to talk on my show to debate that, but there's nobody who I see other than maybe Ben Shelton, who I'm that's a bona fide honestly I guess Taylor Fritz is right there now, but and he's great. He's a great world-class player. So it's good, but it's building for the future. It's I think the future, they've built for the future. It's here. This is almost as good as it's going to get, I think. I'm happy to be proved wrong. But it just seems weird to keep an older veteran who's the number 3 doubles player in the world off there, even if you don't play him.
Yeah.
Like he can just build so much, like bring so much energy. And there was all those tweets about, so Braden Schnurr, I don't know if you saw this, you might going to bring it up. He's a Canadian who used to play on the Davis Cup team. He just cracked the top 100 a couple of years ago and has really fallen off. But, and I don't know, he always comes out with these random hot takes. Like he was trashing Nadal and Djokovic a few years ago, which is like just never going to go well for you.
Yeah.
But he was said, it was like basically Rajeev Ram, like, it's a shame that he wasn't there. Like he wouldn't have been, invited out to the after party with the guys. And he basically said, if you look at the egos on the USA team, it makes sense. And then Taylor Fritz had to go at him and be like, what do you mean ego? And then Tommy Paul, also had to go at him and said, who are you? Like, what do you have to do with tennis? Sorry. Like, I don't know, from my interactions, I've interacted with Tommy Paul. I actually know his coach quite well. And, I haven't interacted with Taylor Fritz. I think it's hard to judge people from what they look like on TV, right? Like,
of course.
And it's hard to judge them from what they say on Twitter as well. But that's just a lot of greasy drama, and I just think it could have been avoided having Rajeev Ram there. And
totally,
like if you watch that, I did watch a bit of that doubles, and I do think Tommy got a little bit exposed in the doubles there. Tommy deserves to be on that team for sure. But on the doubles court, like Rajeev Ram deserves to be there. Honestly, more than Tommy does. I know Tommy's got he's got the best maybe all court game of those 3 singles players, but doesn't necessarily translate to doubles as we saw. So I have no dissent on any of those players. I just think bad coaching decision and really head scratching. There has to be more behind the scenes. Like it's super weird. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I want to know what else is going on, because the fact that Rajeev Ram had such a negative reaction to it, or Starkey at least, says to me that something else is going on. Marty Fish hasn't let on exactly what's happened, to be honest. So I'm not normally as interested in scoops like that, Steve, but it peaked it for some reason. I don't know why.
Fair enough. It's some juicy goss, and it's in fair play. It's about what's happening on the court, right? Like it's the gossip that actually, it's not about somebody's girlfriend or whatever. It's about the team and the strategy and what's going on. So
exactly.
It was. I liked getting into it, and it was funny to watch go down, to be honest.
Right, I'll keep us very, very short, Steve. I was just going to talk some numbers about the Davis Cup before we finish, and obviously I'm conscious of time. But just some success to talk about, because generally the Davis Cup in recent years hasn't had the most success. It's been slated sometimes as a tournament that's on the out, basically, and is there any place for it in the calendar? They were saying 113,000 people attended in the group stages this year, and another 63,000 attended in Malaga. So that's up 70,000 people from last year's 105,000, about a 60 to 70% increase in people at the tournament, right? And if I talk about the Billie Jean King Cup in Glasgow, and I think about Thursday mornings when there was 10 or so people sometimes at some of the ties, they were getting 9,000 people in the door for a lot of those ties that were first thing in the same, on weekdays, which is insane. It's such a good example for people to follow, right? And it's just about countries that love their tennis so much. And it wasn't even that many foreign people there. It was about 80% were Spanish, I think. Okay. And then the 20% were foreign. So it's all about putting it in the right place for me.
Yeah, it seems like that. That's super solid numbers and good to see. Honestly, I believe in the Davis Cup. I think the new format has made it weird a little bit. I think honestly, just because I'm younger, it's like we don't have that historical connection to the old format. And honestly, slugging it out over 3 days and 5-set matches, I don't know how much time we all got for that anymore, but it is I do like it way more than the ATP Cup. It should be the World Championship of tennis, and it's just since it's been there for so long, it deserves to be there in the calendar, and players clearly care about it a lot. So, that's a positive sign for the Davis Cup going forward. And I think a little bit of all this drama, I think got even more a bigger piece of the pie of the tennis audience maybe interested in the Davis Cup and maybe looking forward to what happens next year. I know I'm more interested now in that as well. Of course, with Canada winning as well. But all good signs for the Davis Cup, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good point to end on. I think, Steve, we'll wrap up there, right?
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for coming on. As always, Steve, if you want to catch any of Steve's work, please go to his YouTube channel, which is just The Slice, I believe, Slice Tennis, or
yeah, the Slice Tennis. And one thing new thing we're doing it's called the Monday Bagel. It's a newsletter that we put out. You can find that on my Twitter or anywhere that we post stuff. It's a good way to get a little dose of daily or weekly tennis news on Monday straight to your inbox.
Yeah, and Steve's Twitter handle is at The Slice Tennis as well, right?
It's just at The Slice Steven.
At The Slice Steven, sorry.
Or just type in Stephen Boughton, my name, yeah.
Cool. Thanks very much, Steve. Yeah, and like and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you very much. This has been the Online Tennis Podcast. We'll catch you next time. Cheers. Thanks, Steve.
Cheers.